Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very, very special guest, Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, author of The GAPS Diet, who I've been really looking forward to speaking with. I'm sure you'll all enjoy this as well. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
You're very welcome. Um, I'm sure a lot of people know who you are, but if for those who don't, could you please give us a little introduction about yourself and what you do?
I'm Natasha Campbell-McBride. I'm the creator of the GAPS concept and the GAPS nutritional protocol, GAPS diet, as many people know it.
Right.
And it was born more than 20 years ago now, the concept. And it has become a global phenomenon. So it's been around for a while. And it's based on the fact that our science now provided for us, because the Western science got interested in the gut flora and human microbiome only recently, only a few years ago. But the research is going very rapidly and they're providing us with a lot of interesting information. And the fact that they've given us now that 90% of all cells in the human body are microbes. So our bodies are microbial communities, first and foremost. There is nothing microbe-free in your body. There are microbes in your blood, in your heart, in your lungs, in your liver, in your brain, on every mucous membrane, everywhere. But the biggest community and the most powerful community lives in your digestive system. That's the headquarters of your microbiome, of your overall microbial community. That's where the government is, the officers are, the admiralty, all the commanding echelons that are making all the major decisions in your microbiome. If you ask any microbiologist what is the most powerful influence on a microbial community in nature, the answer will be immediately food. Food. You change food supply to a microbial community and everything changes within hours. Certain species of microbes disappear, other species appear out of nowhere, and the whole microbial community changes. Because your body is a microbial community, food is the most powerful influence on your health and disease. Nothing can come close. Food. GAPS nutritional protocol, GAPS diet, which has been designed now more than 20 years ago, has been specifically designed to bring balance and harmony into your microbial community. Because every microbial community functions on balance and harmony. In fact, everything in nature functions on balance and harmony. And your body is part of nature. It's not man-made. It's been made by the same colossal intelligence that has created nature and created everything else, created the real world. The basis of every microbial community are fungi. They create the scaffolding, they create the network of hyphae in the microbial community. And then along that network of hyphae, bacteria, viruses, other little creatures, archaea, other smaller creatures, create their little towns and villages and their communities. And the fungal network acts as a roadwork in that community, bringing nutrients, bringing water, taking away wastes, neutralizing various toxic things. So every microbial community is highly structured. It's like a complex city where there are streets, lanes, roads, and houses, and this gas supply and electricity supply and sewage and water supply and everything else. So that's what your body is supposed to be. That's what it is. Problem is, we human beings are very good at creating imbalances in nature. Every time you take an antibiotic, you kill part of that microbial community that your body is. So the balance is gone. The harmony is gone. As a result, what's left after that antibiotic? No antibiotic can kill everything. It only kills a narrow group of microbes in your body. So what's left then overgrows, gets out of balance, out of harmony. What is disease? Is absence of harmony. It's a cacophony. It's a disharmony. What is good health? Good health is harmony. And the problem is that human beings now in the modern world, particularly in the Western world, now are eating antibiotics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because practically every agricultural chemical that is used for growing our food is an antibiotic in its nature. And the most common one is glyphosate, that is now used throughout the whole growing season of all crops, practically all crops in the Western world in the industrial agriculture. And it's particularly used right at the end, before harvesting, because it desiccates the crop and it's easier to harvest. So your bread is full of glyphosate. Anything made out of flour, any vegetable oil is full of glyphosate, your sugar, practically every crop, because it's doused with that powerful broad-spectrum antibiotic called glyphosate just before harvesting. So because we're eating, everything you buy in a supermarket is full of these chemicals. People are eating antibiotics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and in between. As a result, practically everybody now has damaged microbiome in their bodies. And that is GAPS, gut and psychology syndrome, and gut and physiology syndrome. I have 2 books with these names, which describe gut and psychology syndrome focuses on the brain, gut and physiology focuses on the rest of the body, and both abbreviate in the English language to the same GAPS. That is what GAPS is. A person with abnormal microbiome, with cacophony, with disharmony, lack of balance in their microbial community in their body, and as a result, the person gets ill. That's a long answer to a short question.
No, no, that was great. So what is the GAPS protocol exactly? What do you have people normally do? I know it covers 2 books, but in a nutshell, what is the idea behind the GAPS protocol, and how does one do it?
Just press this button here. First and foremost, it is a diet, because remember, your body is a microbial community, and food is the most powerful influence on any microbial community in the world. It is a program. The major part of it is the GAPS diet, but then we have a few supplements, and we have very important part of lifestyle changes and detoxification. It's important to keep your body clean and to change your lifestyle, because our Western in particular lifestyles are very incompatible with good health. Practically everything we do in our lifestyles in the West are incompatible with good health. They destroy good health. So GAPS nutritional protocol is a program. It's not just a diet. But of course, the diet is the most important part of it. What we do with the GAPS diet, we remove all the foods that feed pathogenic microbes, particularly fungi, in the body of the person, and we replace them with foods that are easily digested, easily absorbed, and that truly nourish the human body. Human body renews itself all the time. Every cell only has a short life. It works very hard. It gets old. It dies. It gets removed by the body. A new baby cell is born to replace it. So your body constantly renews itself. Constantly. Every 7 years, you have new skeleton. Completely new bones. All your bones have been completely changed. Every 3 months, you've got a new liver. Your gut lining, the cells, they only live a few days, 2-3 days they live. So the cell turnover is quite rapid. And that means that your body has to give birth to trillions of baby cells every day. In order to do that, building materials are required. These cells have to be made from something. Where do they come from, these building materials? From food, of course. So it is very important to provide the correct food for your body to build itself out of quality materials. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen for the majority of people in this world. Majority of people are eating very poor quality materials, very poor quality foods, and they provide poor quality materials, and as a result, your body is made out of poor quality materials. If your car was made out of poor quality materials, do you think it will drive far? Or will it be comfortable to drive? Or will it actually do what it's supposed to do? No, it won't. The same with the human body. If you don't provide it with the right foods, with the good quality materials, then all sorts of things will go wrong in you. Many people, even at the age of 30, 35, have a poor spine. They have back pain, and their discs are protruding, and they're doing operations and doing all kinds of, interventions. It shouldn't be like that. People break their bones at the age of 25, falling on a perfectly level floor, just slipped on a slippery floor or something, and fall on an outstretched hand and break the bone. That breakage, when I was a student, medical student, that breakage was called the breakage of a menopausal woman, because menopausal women are known to have osteoporosis. A young person in 20s or 30s or 40s is not supposed to break their bone here when they fall on a slippery floor. They're supposed to be much stronger. That means that people have osteoporosis. Their bones are weak, they're thin, they're porous, and they break very easily because people build their bodies out of poor quality materials because they're eating a wrong diet. Unfortunately, the world is full of nutritional misinformation, which the governments send to the population. The food pyramid that is given to us by our government agencies, and all the propaganda that's pouring from nutritional science, which is the major source of nutritional misinformation in this world. And many people believe these authorities, they believe these sources, and follow their advice, and as a result, they get ill. Generally speaking, I'm now 64 years old, and I have been practicing for best part of 40 years. And the conclusion I have come to that whatever the authorities are telling you, particularly on food, particularly on your health, turn it upside down and you will see the truth. That's what we all have to do. Okay.
It's funny. People say that flippantly, but but then more and more people are saying it seriously. That whatever the official guidelines are, just do the opposite, or whatever the government tells you, just do the opposite, or whatever even doctors tell you, just do the opposite when it comes to certain things like diet and nutrition, and and of course that's not always true, but unfortunately, when it comes to nutrition, it often is. And it is, I think it's, and I would imagine you would agree with me that the source of many harms and ills comes from inappropriate diets and then the misinformation that we get from these dietary authorities as well.
Absolutely. We're both medical doctors and we know what kind of education we received on nutrition.
Mm, yeah,
None.
yeah,
None.
exactly.
We might have got, a couple of hours lecture
Mm,
about nutrition the whole of 7 years of training in the
mm,
medical school. So medical doctors have no idea about food and how it works in the human body. So asking a medical doctor for advice on what you should eat is not a sensible thing to do. And I'm telling you
mm.
this medical doctor.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
exactly.
the trained medical doctor. So don't ask them. And whatever the authorities are telling you, this is serious, this is not flippant.
Mhm.
This is a conclusion of 40 years of practice. Turn it upside down. You are given the opposite of what is true. And let me repeat this again. There is nothing more powerful in its effect on human health than food.
Mm. Yeah, I
Nothing can
totally
come
agree.
even close
Yeah.
to the effect on human health than food. And yet the medical profession are given an impression that food has nothing to do with health,
Mhm.
has nothing to do with disease. All kinds of other things can be blamed, but not food. So many doctors have a very sort of superficial knowledge in this area and attitude in this area. Food. So we live in a world of abundant information. It's a wonderful world we live in. Everything's at our fingertips. Even when I was a student, we didn't have computers. We didn't have
Mhm.
internet. So this is a fairly recent thing. So I know what it's like, when for any bit of information, you had to go to the library. You had to search for a book. You had to sit down and read the book. And you don't know, some books were not available and it was hard to find correct information at that time. Now it's all very easy for people. So whenever you get ill, just go online and find the best book on that subject, on the particular diagnosis that you've received, and you're likely to find a far more true information from writers who have lived through it, who have been ill with this particular disease themselves, and who found solutions. Because human beings only learn through experience. We don't acquire knowledge from books and from hearing from somebody else. You have to go through an experience, and you have to go through all feelings and emotions of that experience. Only then you truly know something. And a person who has been through that disease and found solutions and recovered will know a million times more than any doctor who just read about it in the book and who is just telling you what they've been told to tell you.
Absolutely. And I've seen so many people when they take that advice and the term doing your own research sort of has been trying to people have been trying to give it a bad connotation that you should not do your own research. You should just listen to experts and authorities. Um, Doing your own research used to be just called education. You just educate yourself, and now we're actively trying to dissuade people from educating themselves and being informed and making an informed choice. That's the entire ethos behind medicine, is that people have a fully informed decision in their care. We have nothing close to that now. People don't even explain the side effects of certain drugs now before they prescribe patients with them. So there's nothing resembling informed consent. But now you have an entire industry, media, etc., that are trying to dissuade people from just being informed and making an informed decision. No, just blindly follow the advice. Don't make an informed decision. And anytime you have people arguing that you should not educate yourself and not make an informed decision, I would suspect sinister ulterior motives, because of course you would want people to make informed decisions. And if your information is the best information, then it should stand up against scrutiny. Only bad ideas need to be protected with ignorance of any alternatives. So if you have somebody saying, no, 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 don't look at the man behind the curtain, ignore him, just listen to what I'm saying, it's generally trying to run a con of some form.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. This is the result of education system we have.
Yeah.
The most valuable activity and the most important activity of a human being in this world is thinking. Thinking. Because the way this universe is organized by the grand creator, we live in ether. We live in a field of infinite energy. What is matter? It's energy that's been organized around an informational matrix. What are human thoughts? Human thoughts are these matrices. A thought is a matrix that comes out of you into this field and organizes energy, and that then turns into matter. It turns into your reality. Every one of us creates our own reality. So children are born into this world with a sharp ability to think and analyze and to create their own reality, because we're all creators. That's how we've been designed, human beings. But then the child goes into the education system where that ability is crushed, because the purpose of education system is not to bring up thinking human beings who can think for themselves and create their own reality. Not at all. The purpose of it is to create obedient workforce, which is incapable of independent thinking and which would just blindly obey and do what they're told. That's the purpose of the education system. Many parents now realize this and they are homeschooling their children. They're not subjecting them to this, bed of Procrust anymore. So children go in there, and every child is born with his own destiny, his own unique talents, his own unique abilities. All of that is crushed. And the child is just fitted into this straitjacket where they are told not to think for themselves. Any ability of thinking, independent thought is knocked out of them, and just trust the expert opinion. Trust what we tell you and blindly obey. And unfortunately, we now have generations of people who have been through that kind of mill. They They have not been taught how to think. They haven't got independent thought. They for any question that they have in their mind, they wouldn't stop and think themselves. I should switch on my brain and think myself how to answer this question. No, they run to experts. They pay experts and they ask somebody else for an opinion. We have to change that. It's very difficult for us, the adults who have been through that educational mill, that education system, to change, but we can. But it is very important for us to protect our children from that, to allow them to grow up as creators who are able of independent thought, who do not run to adults for every question and every answer, who think for themselves. So it's very important for adults to understand that and to bring up children that way. So that's why we have a population that just obeys and believes the government and believes the authorities, despite obvious, blatant evidence that the authorities have an agenda which may not agree with your agenda at all, may not agree with what you want for yourself, just the opposite.
Yeah, there's a philosopher, thinker, economist that I really enjoy reading, Dr. Thomas Sowell, and he pointed out that education system used to teach you how to think, now it just teaches you what to think, and it's that's a very different thing. I think that one of the things that maybe helped me past that stage was I I don't know why, but I just remember having sort of an innate sort of distrust of the things that teachers told me, and I remember thinking like, well, I don't know much yet, but that one doesn't really sound right. So I'm just gonna I'll store that back and say, okay, well, I'll believe it for now, but I'll keep an eye on this, and down the line, if something comes up to counter it, I'm gonna replace that out. I wasn't just like, yeah, this is what it is. And I think thankfully I had some very good teachers, but then I had one lady in particular. She was so far out there that it was just so blatantly obvious that she was just making things up. And that probably really helped me say like, okay, these people don't know everything, and I shouldn't just trust everything that they said. This, I swear to God, she was she would actually tell us that men could get pregnant, that women could, yeah, that women, and this wasn't even like with the new whole woke ideology. She was talking biologically that somehow the gametes could actually go up inside the man for some reason and implant in the men, and that in women they could implant anywhere, it didn't have to be in the womb, and so they would have cesarean deliveries if they just implanted in the abdomen. And she probably was just mistaking ectopic pregnancies and understanding that something could implant elsewhere and just not realize that that was a life-threatening emergency and that that was not going to be a viable fetus at the end of the day. But she told us this in such a matter-of-fact way that this was just, yes, oh yes, women can deliver babies, outside of the womb.
You
Yes,
watched
they can.
Hollywood, probably.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
That film with Schwarzenegger, when he was
oh yeah, yeah,
pregnant.
right, yeah, yeah.
That's right.
I don't know if I mean, you being in England, you may have come across this, but there was an old British show called Red Dwarf. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was on for years, but it was back in like the 80s and 90s. And it was like in the future space. And there was one episode where they went to like this mirror universe where the men got pregnant and things like that. And in that they said like, well, yeah, men get pregnant. It's like, well, I can't get pregnant because I don't have the equipment. And they're like, well, male baboons have been giving birth as far back as the 20th century, something like that. So there's this line. I remember seeing this when we watched the BBC when I was a kid. And so we watched this show, and then she said that. She said, yes, well, male baboons have given birth actually, and by cesarean. It was like directly out of this show Red Dwarf, which was satire and science fiction. And it just dawned on me like that she's just completely making this stuff up out of a TV show that she watched and
Good
believed
job
in.
you were able to think straight and to
Mhm.
realize that she
I
doesn't
was
know what she's talking about.
Yeah, and there were people in the class that were just enthralled with what she was saying. Oh wow, really? Wow, really? And I was just like, yeah, you guys are gonna have a hard life. if you're believing this.
Well, the thing is, you see, there are two worlds in this world. There is the real world created by the grand creator. It's our planet, it's nature, it's the moon, the sun, the whole galaxy, the oceans, the land, the animals, the birds, trees, forests, plants. And that real world is in harmony. It's in balance. There is a circle of life. Death of one creature is the beginning of many, many other lives. And everything is intent on producing babies. Everything is intent on procreating. And everything feeds everything. And everything can regenerate and can heal itself in that world. And it functions on balance and harmony. And then there is this little technocratic construct that human beings have created, man-made thing. What man does, man takes resources out of the real world, minerals, water, wood, oil, and other things, holds it all into his factories, chops it up, changes it, and makes up his technocratic things. Cars and houses and roads and cities and gadgets and clothes and all sorts of other things. And human beings are very proud of their technocratic inventions, but they cannot regenerate themselves. They cannot repair themselves. They cannot produce babies. There is no circle of life. And everything moves in one direction, from the factory to the rubbish tip, to the garbage tip. As soon as you bought new clothing, in a few months it turns into rags and finishes up on the rubbish tip. As soon as you bought your new car, it starts rusting, you have to repair it all the time, and it finishes up on the rubbish tip. Everything goes one way, from the factory to the rubbish tip. There is no circle of life. Nothing produces babies. There is no logic in it, and it's based on chaos. There is no balance. There is no harmony. It's based on chaos. It's a chaotic construct. To support the ideology of this construct has its own ideology, its own sort of mental construct to support the whole thing. And this ideology is ideology based on chaos, on manipulations, and on lies. The worst of humanity is in charge in a technocratic construct. We have technocratic governments, technocratic banks, technocratic laws, technocratic education, technocratic medicine, technocratic everything. And all of it is run by the worst of humanity usually, and all of it is run on manipulations and lies. I'll give you a simple example. I'm a farmer. I'm an organic regenerative farmer, because working with food, at a certain point, one realizes that you can't trust anyone to produce your food. You have to produce it yourself. If you want the best food, you have to produce it yourself. So 12 years ago, my family got a piece of land. It's not a big piece of land. And now I'm proud to say that we are completely self-sufficient. We produce all of our own food, which is a wonderful thing to be able to say. And the farm has taught me an awful lot in these 12 years, because nature teaches you new lessons every single day. Every animal teaches you lessons. Every bird teaches you lessons when you're immersed in nature, when you're in contact with nature. And I remember we were getting some feral cats for our farm to deal with rats, because a good farm must have everything. It's a complete circle of life. It's like a family. It needs to have every creature present in order to have balance, in order to have harmony, because you have grain on the farm to feed the chickens, and wherever you have grain, you will have rats. So when we were trying to get these feral cats, we were treated to a forceful lecture by a lady who ran the place, who ran this cat shelter, that we must not allow our feral cats to eat rats and mice. They're bad for them. They'll be riddled with parasites. They should only eat these pellets out of a bag, the commercial cat food, because it's got vitamins in it and it's easy to add drugs to it. She even threatened me that if I don't promise to her that I will not allow my cats to eat rats and mice, she will not let me have these cats. So I had to keep my mouth shut and bring these poor cats home. And of course, I've never fed them this nonsense. Now they've lived on rats and mice for 10 years or so, these cats. You couldn't meet more beautiful and more healthy cats. They never need any drugs. They never needed a veterinary attention. Their fur is glossy, they're beautiful, they're healthy, they're agile, and they're just a sheer delight. And from the moment they arrived to our farm, we haven't seen one rat or one mouse. Cats and mice and rats were created together by the grand creator. These little animals are perfect food for cats. But you see, that woman was a technocrat. She lives in a technocratic construct. She's got technocratic mind. She went to education. She truly believed what she was saying to me. You could not argue with her. I say I had to keep my mouth shut, otherwise I would not have been able to bring those cats to my farm, to rescue them from that terrible cat shelter where they lived in a small cage and fed these pellets out of a bag, poor things. So that is the technocratic propaganda, technocratic education, technocratic philosophy, technocratic ideology, and technocrats believe it. They trust it. There are authorities in this technocratic construct, the governments, international authorities, and look how they behave. Just look at what they've done in that big entertainment we had from 2019 till 2022. How they've constructed the whole thing and what they've done to the whole humanity. What are they doing now? The tyranny that is increasing all the time. And people who are born in a technocratic construct, grew up in it and live in it, they're afraid of nature. They are told to be afraid of nature. They are told that nature is hostile and dangerous. And we have volunteers on my farm. We had more than 1,000 volunteers coming from all over the world. And we teach them organic farming. We teach them how to look after animals, birds, how to milk goats, how to make cheese, how to make cream, butter, and all the other, how to cook, And all of them, the longer they stay with us, the more they transform. It's beautiful to see because contact with nature teaches you every moment, and it gives you the truth. Because the truth exists only in the real world, in nature. There is no truth in the technocratic construct. So what's happening now? Technocracy is rapidly heading for its own self-destruction. It's inevitable. It will self-destruct. It cannot be saved, it cannot be improved, it cannot be healed, because it's built on false premises to start with. And people who are holding on to it and believing in it and immersed in it will go down with it. But lots of people are waking up, they're extracting themselves out of this technocratic construct, and they're wanting to go back to the real world, to live with nature, to have their own farms, to produce their own food, to create communities. We have to take small steps, of course. But the most important thing we need to do for humanity to get out of technocracy and return back into the real world is children. We don't need more technocrats. We need real children. Children who grow up in nature, who run barefoot, who swim in rivers and lakes, who look after animals and chickens, right? Who are mucky, who have got one dress for the whole summer and it's covered in mud. That's how it should be. Technocratic construct taught people to be afraid of microbes. That, they teach them this concept, that completely false concept, that the world is full of these microscopic little creatures who are ready to pounce on you and devour you. You can't see them, but they're lurking around. So you must sterilize everything and be afraid of them. Viruses, bacteria, and so on. And yet your body is a microbial community. 90% of you. If you're afraid of microbes, you're afraid of yourself, of your own body. And because your body is a microbial community, if it is balanced and harmonious, it will not let any microbe in. In fact, my clinical experience taught me a fact that every infection arises from within your own body. It doesn't come from outside. Viruses are just snippets of genetics, and we live in a free market of genetics. They're everywhere, these genetics. And your body, if it needs a particular snippet of genetic to do something, it will pick it up and it will use it. But if it doesn't need it, it will not pick it up. It can be swimming in it, but it's a microbial community, extremely powerful. There's uncountable numbers of microbes in you. Literally, you can't even count them. If it's balanced and if it's harmonious, you think they'll let something in? Absolutely not. That is why you can have a room full of, let's say, 10 people, and one person comes in with a flu, with a cold, sneezing and coughing all over everybody. A couple of people develop the same cold, the rest will not. Why is that? If the world was so dangerous and full of these microbes lurking around, ready to pounce on you, all 10 people should have got ill, right? Not at all, because those 2 people who picked it up were contaminated with industrial technocratic chemicals, maybe your shampoo and your personal care products and food full of chemicals and water full of chemicals and exhaust from cars and other pollution around. And the body decided, I could do with this snippet of genetic. I will slot it into my own system and will switch on wonderful cleansing mechanisms. We'll give this person runny nose and cough and lots of mucus production and diarrhea and sweating, and all of these mechanisms of runny nose and diarrhea and sweating will flush out these toxins. We will cleanse in a powerful way. And that's what a cold is. A common cold is a cleansing opportunity for the body, that the body constructs itself, and the body will never do it haphazardly. It'll prepare for a cold. That is why it's so important for us human beings to trust the cold and respect it. Stay in bed, run the temperature, just drink lots of water with a bit of lemon in it and with a pinch of salt maybe, and not knock the temperature down, because your body is cleansing, and the temperature is a very powerful mechanism of our immune system to cleanse, because a lot of toxins that have accumulated in your body need to be melted first. They are fat soluble, they're congealed, they're sitting in your tissues, and in order to remove them out of the body has to increase temperature to melt them first, because when you have a greasy dish in the kitchen, you need hot water to wash it, right? You need to melt the fat first before it can be washed properly. The same with the human body. If these are fat-soluble toxins, they are congealed. The body has to increase temperature to melt them down before they can be removed. But what do people do in a technocratic construct? They run to the doctors, to the pharmacy, they knock the temperature down, they stop the pain, they take anti-inflammatory drugs, and they go to work. They don't respect the cold, they don't respect your body trying to cleanse with this sort of thing. So what is the body to do in that situation? It prepared for this cleansing event, and that cleansing event was stopped abruptly by drugs, by pharmaceuticals. So the toxins are still remaining in your body. Next time the body will try to do it again, you'll stop it again. Next time the body will then use not the viruses, because the viruses give us the mildest cleanse. It will use bacteria, which are far more powerful and can give you much more trouble than viruses. But you then run to the doctors and get antibiotics, and you stop the bacterial infection as well for cleansing. So then what the body is to do, the next step will be fungal. Fungal. And what is fungal? That is autoimmunity, that is cancer, that is degenerative chronic disease. That is why we have such an epidemic of chronic degenerative diseases, and every second person dies from cancer in the Western world. And everybody's got allergies, and many people suffer from autoimmunity and various other neurological conditions, hormonal conditions, and all kinds of mental illnesses. All of these degenerative chronic conditions are fungal in their origin. And this fungus arose from your own body, from within, because every microbial community, the basis of it is a fungal network, fungi. Your body is a fungal network, and all kinds of other creatures live on it. It's a microbial community. And the bacterial infection that the body used arose from within, and the same with viral infections. They arose from within. And people need to understand all of this. So when you have a cold, when you have an infection, it is a cleansing event. Your body is trying to throw off technocratic toxicity that you've accumulated in your body. You have to respect this process and allow your body to do this work. Never reduce the temperature. Stay in bed, sweat, hydrate yourself. A few days, the temperature will reduce naturally after the body has melted all the toxicity and removed it from you. And you'll come out of it clean. All cancer cells will be destroyed. Parasites will be destroyed. All toxicity will be gone. You'll come out clean and healthy and feeling well. Talking about small children, the first fever in a small child, in a toddler or a baby, must never be reduced. It is a vital, vital cleansing event for the child. Because, why? Because the pregnancy is a chance for the mother's body to cleanse. It sounds cruel, sounds unfair, but during pregnancy, the mother's body cleanses by dumping toxins into the baby, into the fetus. Because our women nowadays live in a technocratic world, they're exposed to a huge amount of chemicals, man-made chemicals, personal care products, vanity products, cleaning chemicals, laundry detergents, dishwasher detergents, all kinds of chemicals. A lot of them accumulate in the woman's body. And the women are having children later and later in life, having their first child later and later in life. So they have a long period of time that they've been accumulating. So when she gets pregnant for the first time, her body thinks, great, I'll clean up. And it dumps the lot into the baby. If that toxicity is enough to kill the baby, then she will have a miscarriage or a stillbirth. We have an epidemic of miscarriages. Many women nowadays have 1, 2, 3 miscarriages before she's capable of producing a viable body for her baby, because her body is so toxic. If that toxicity is not enough to kill the baby, then the baby will be born with a high toxic load. And if you look at the statistics of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, diabetes type 1, allergies in children, asthma, eczema, and other problems, majority of them are firstborn. The mother cleansed on that first baby. She dumped a lot. Whatever, from her childhood, she's been accumulating all the way to this first pregnancy. That is why this child is ill. His body is full of toxins. So when the baby gets the first temperature, or the toddler gets the first temperature, never reduce it. That is an event when the body cleanses itself of that toxic load the child was born with. This is the purpose of measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, and other childhood infections, because they all come with high temperature. To melt all that gunk that the child has accumulated from the mother's body and to remove it through sweat, through diarrhea, through vomiting, through coughing and sneezing and runny nose, through all of those liquids are out of the body. So if the family doesn't reduce the temperature and allows the baby to go through that temperature, the baby will cleanse in a powerful way. And in my clinical experience, what happens when a child is allowed to go through the temperature like that? They have a huge accelerated development spurt afterwards. They become brighter, more intelligent. Their eyesight improves, their brain improves, their motor skills improve. Everything improves because the child has cleansed. The brain has cleansed, the body has cleansed, and is now able to evolve and develop in a far more normal and healthy way as a result. But the problem is, as soon as a child or a baby gets a temperature, parents run and get Calpol or get something else from the pharmacy to knock the temperature down, and as a result, the child doesn't cleanse. And they don't allow the child to have childhood infections. They vaccinate against these infections to stop them. The vaccinations will never give you a proper immunity for any infection. They're incapable of doing that. All they do, they just stop that particular venue for cleansing in the body. They stop the toxins coming out of the body. We don't even know how they work in the body, but they do something in the body to stop the body from using that particular method of cleansing. But the body will then have to cleanse another way. And your child will be autistic, or hyperactive, or dyslexic, or have diabetes type 1, or something else, because you did not allow your body to use, the child's body to use temperature, high temperature, which measles will give him, chickenpox will give him, mumps will give him, rubella will give him, all of these childhood infections. humanity's children have been going through these infections for millennia, possibly for millions of years. We don't know how long humanity existed on this planet, and there's no point to listen to technocratic sciences. They don't know anything. Technocratic sciences. The whole technocratic construct is based on lies and manipulation. So people have been allowing their children to go through these childhood infections, and vast majority of them survive those infections perfectly well, sail through them, and come out the other end healthier because they've cleansed, and then they can develop. They become intelligent. They become bright. Their brains work properly in these children. Children who develop complications from these childhood infections have poor nutritional status. They live on breakfast cereals, skimmed milk, sugar, 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 flour, 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 potatoes, junk, sweet things, starchy things. Their bodies are severely malnourished. That is why they can't go through the infection properly and they can't heal. Their bodies are made out of poor quality materials. If a child is properly nourished, and that means the child is eating meat, fish, eggs, good quality dairy, and plenty of fat, plenty of animal fats, the child will sail through this infection and come out the other end much healthier, much stronger, and much more capable of developing in a healthy way, mentally and physically. It is essential for our children to go through this infection. Absolutely essential. Fathers are not exempt. The father's major venue for unloading toxicity from his body is his semen. And that goes into the mother. The mother absorbs it and then she dumps it into the baby. So that's how both the father and the mother unload their toxicity into the fetus. So every future parent needs to know this and needs to understand this. And it's important nowadays for future parents to prepare for pregnancy. We can't just haphazardly get pregnant anymore. We need to cleanse. We need to change our diet. We need to change our environment, live in a cleaner environment overall, so that the woman is able to provide a cleaner body for her future child to grow in. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I gotten tussles with nurses early on in my career, like in intern year, especially because there was at the hospital I was at, they were adamant that you treat fevers. That oh, it has a fever. Oh, we have to get that down. Like that was the overall treatment was the fever. The fever was the disease, and so they wanted to get the fever down straight away. And you had to I had to show them papers from the Mayo Clinic, talking about how this was actually a bad idea, even from Western standards, that the fever was a normal physiological process that happened. The body was doing this on purpose. It wasn't the infection causing the fever. It was the body causing the fever, and it's typically from interferon and other factors in the body that intentionally raise the body temperature, that our immune cells work better, have a higher activation energy, and work better at higher temperatures, and that by giving these medications that can lower the temperature, not only are you taking away something very useful for the body that's there to help, and get people healthy, but how is it doing it? It's blocking part of the immune system. It can, like Tylenol, paracetamol can block interferon. That's an integral part of the immune system in this process. And now you're blocking that. You're shutting that down. So you're literally giving people, immune modulators, the immunosuppressive drugs, mild, but they are. And so the Mayo Clinic said that this was a very bad idea, and that that their studies had shown that by doing that, by giving people paracetamol or Tylenol or anything that lower the fever, that this increased infection severity and duration. So it made things worse. It made things a lot worse. And, so that makes, it makes perfect sense. I mean, your body's doing this for a reason, and we should
Absolutely.
trust
That's
the process.
technocratic medicine.
Mm.
That is technocratic medicine, which is based on this Pasteur's theory, the germ theory. And it's based on the theory that the world is full of these microscopic, dangerous creatures that we can't see, but they're lurking out and they're ready to attack. And we need to fight them at every turn and bring them down. And the immune system is basically just crushed down all the time with all these pharmaceuticals.
Hmm.
And that's how the medical profession is trained. There is all kinds of healing in the world, and every form of healing has its place. Mainstream medicine has its place only in emergencies.
Mm.
You got run over by a bus, God forbid. You need mainstream medicine. They'll put you together, they'll put your body together. But then healing it and bringing it to full health would be your job and only your job, because they can't do that. But when it comes to the chronic illnesses, chronic degenerative conditions, mainstream doctors are not the right people to go to at all. They have no idea what causes these diseases, and they have no idea how to heal from them. In fact, mainstream medicine is all about disease, fighting disease, controlling disease. It's not about health.
Mm.
So if you're playing a game called disease, then go ahead. But if you want to play a game called health, good health, then the mainstream doctor is not the right person to go to at all.
Yeah,
It's a
definitely.
technocratic medicine.
Mhm.
We need to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I've certainly seen that. I mean, mainstream medicine is really about, disease management and then sick care as opposed to health care and getting people healthy. We have an innate health. We should be healthy all the time. All life on Earth is inherently healthy unless something has gone wrong. And there's no such thing as a sick species because life begets life. And so we are begotten from the successful um, individuals that were able to succeed in life, succeed in nature. And and so by definition, you can't have a sickly species that is just inherently sick. You may have sick individuals, but if you see a whole population that's sick like we do now, 90+% of people have metabolic diseases, 70% of people overweight or obese. When you see that, obviously something has gone wrong in the environment. We've done something to ourselves because that's not our inherent nature. Our inherent nature is to be healthy. And so it's that there's something going wrong at a baseline level because it's not us. And when you look at the diseases and the issues that afflicted people in the 1800s, people kept records of this. And so I've researched this for the book I'm writing, and you see exactly what people were afflicted with, what the causes of death were. They were nothing resembling the issues that we are dealing with now. Those are the small minority of the issues that we were dealing with, and now it's the large majorities. And some people argue that, well, that's because we've just gotten so good at dealing with all these other issues, the infectious diseases and injuries and things like that, that were the main causative factors of disease and illness in the past. And now it's just these other little chronic diseases that's taking over me. That is so absurd to even say because the burden of disease is so much greater now. Chronic disease, acute, whatever, it's all worse now. So it's not like we were just horrible and just dying of just terrible afflictions 100 years ago, and now things are so much better. No, things are much worse. They're much worse than they were 50 years ago, and so
Absolutely.
we can see this getting worse. And so,
No,
um,
even looking at the old Hollywood films
mm,
from 30s, just look at the people there. You won't see anybody overweight.
yeah,
You won't see anybody in glasses. And they are
mm,
so active, and they're so full of life and vitality, and they move
mm,
in a vital way, those people. They're completely different people. They all look
mm,
healthy in those films, and it all happened very rapidly. This is technocratic population we're talking about. Technocracy is based on lies and manipulation and falsity. And technocratic population is sick and is getting sicker and sicker. If you look at the real world, if you extract yourself out of technocracy and look at the real world, there are still tribes of people remaining in isolated jungles and isolated places in the world. They still exist, these tribes who live with nature. They live in the real world and they obey the laws, the universal laws of the grand creator. We know 12 laws, that humanity has discovered. I know at least two more laws. I'm sure there are lots of them that we haven't discovered yet, but there are laws of the universe. the laws of the Grand Creator that the Grand Creator laid when he created this real world, because the real world works according to those laws. Every creature in the universe obeys these laws, apart from a two-legged creature called man, who lives in technocracy, who doesn't even know about their existence. It's high time for us all to learn these laws and start obeying them. Technocratic construct and people who live in that construct in technocracy, they've created their own laws, their own regulations, which are all based on falsity and manipulations. They have nothing to do with good health or the real world. And people who follow all of that, they just get ill. That is why the technocratic population is so sick, and the statistics are getting worse and worse. You know, the babies that I've seen in my clinic 5 years ago were much healthier than the babies we see today. Many of them simply are not even viable anymore. I don't think these children will even survive anymore. This is an absolute avalanche upon technocratic population. It's dying out, and it is degenerating rapidly. Those people that I started talking about, which live in the jungles and still live in the real world, they're so healthy. And when we tell them about infertility in the technocratic construct, they start laughing. They don't believe us. They say, how can it be that a woman can't conceive? Such thing cannot possibly happen. You know, they've never heard of it. All their children are healthy, and they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're so curious, and they all can think, those children, and they can solve their own problems. These are completely different children. And there are none of the diseases of our technocratic construct. And, you know, these tribes that still exist, there aren't many of them left, unfortunately, because the technocratic humanity keeps getting to these people and civilizing them, bringing the civilizing technocratic influences. As a result, those people get sick and they develop the same diseases that the technocratic population has. But Weston A. Price, a wonderful man who lived in the first half of the 20th century, who took 10 years. He was a dentist, and he was actually a head of the American Dental Association. He was a high-position dentist. He took 10 years out of his work, and he traveled around the world to study these real people, these traditional societies, which existed in many parts of the world in those days. They were far more numerous in those days. And what he's made meticulous notes. He did blood tests, he did urine tests, he examined their teeth because he was a dentist. He took a lot of photographs, and his archive exists, and it's kept by the Price Pottinger Foundation in California. It's a huge archive of an amazing material, and he discovered that all of them were healthy. None of them had diseases of our technocratic construct, of our modern civilization, as he put it. They all lived in different places of the world, because he went to Inuits in Greenland and to tropical islands in the Pacific Ocean, Africa and Asia and everywhere else. And all of these people ate food that was available in their local environment, naturally. So they were all very different diets, all of them, but they were all very healthy because they lived in the real world, these people. And not only they were physically healthy, they were mentally healthy, and they were spiritually healthy. They lived very different lives with very different ideology, very different philosophy, in communities where everybody served the community. And they were all givers, because human beings are only happy when we give, not when we take. The more we take, the more unhappy we become, the more miserable we become. And unfortunately, the technocratic construct is based on very different, the opposite philosophies of individualism, look after number one, dog eat dog, and all of that. You know, all of those sort of things. And that just creates spiritual illnesses, as well as mental illnesses, as well as physical illnesses. And it creates isolated, atomized individuals who are lonely. Huge cities full of lonely people who have nobody, no family to speak of, no friends, nobody who cares for them, nobody who loves them, nobody who could protect them. You know, it's a very sad situation. So technocracy is deeply sick and dysfunctional, and it's heading to self-destruction. Everybody should understand that, extract themselves and move into the real world as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. And so in relation to the GAPS diet side of things, what have you found to be the primary principles behind the diet side of things?
Well, the two books that I'm talking about are here. Gut
Hmm.
Psychology Syndrome, Gut Physiology Syndrome. I think they're in the picture. The yellow book was published in 2004 first. It's now in its second edition. And that one focused on the brain. Because at the time I was working with autism, other learning disabilities, and mental illnesses in people. The second book was written much later, and that one focuses on the rest of the body, on all the physical illnesses. But the protocol is the same. We had to adjust protocol for various conditions, so we now have different varieties of the GAPS diet. And the important point that I want to talk about, which is important to talk about today, is the animal foods versus plant foods. That's very important for people to understand, because we have a propaganda in the technocratic construct. Technocratic construct is run by the worst of humanity. They have their own agenda. You cannot trust them. That is why all the propaganda coming from them needs to be taken with a huge pinch of salt. So the propaganda that's going on now is for vegetarianism and veganism. And many people fall for this propaganda. I have written a book on this subject called Vegetarianism Explained. It's this book.
Mm.
It's not very big, this book. But what this book explains, that the only foods that feed human body and build your physical structure out of quality materials are animal foods. Meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants are cleansers. They do not feed you. They are not capable of feeding the human body. And let me explain why. I started getting years ago, over my clinical experience, I started getting all these young people with mental illnesses, severe physical illnesses in their 20s, usually, who absolutely destroyed themselves through veganism and vegetarianism. And many of them were perfectly healthy youngsters. When they got subjected to this propaganda for vegetarianism and veganism, they probably watched some film about the battery hens or about a confined animal factory operation in the industrial agriculture where animals are kept in appalling conditions, and decided not to eat meat anymore. That propaganda, the people who own that industrial agricultural system, they make these films themselves in their own factories. And then add the slant on it, the propaganda to make everybody vegan and vegetarian, and I will explain why. So I started researching this subject. I got very interested in this subject. I went to India several times because everybody were pointing to India saying, oh, they're all vegetarians and vegans there. And look at them,
Hmm.
kind of. So I've
Hmm.
researched that. And what I've discovered a basic fact, which we've known from 1930s, that the only things in nature, in the real world, who can digest plant matter are microbes. Nobody else can digest plants. Only a balanced microbial community can digest plant matter. Mother Nature used this fact, this scientific fact, in creating the digestive system of a cow, or a goat, or a sheep, or another herbivorous animal. Mother Nature gave them several stomachs, enormous stomachs. A cow has these 3 enormous stomachs. Majority of her belly is full of those stomachs, called a rumen, full of microbes. She has a powerful, huge microbial community in all of those stomachs. So the grass that she eats, she doesn't digest herself. It's that microbial community in her rumen that does the work for her and digests the grass for her. We human beings don't have a rumen. We have a small stomach which produces hydrochloric acid. The acidity can be below 1 pH when we're hungry. Very hostile environment for any microbe to survive in. That is why human stomach, a healthy human stomach, is the least populated area of the human body. It's practically sterile. Only a few microbes manage to hang about there, hold on there. Otherwise, it's practically sterile. Remember, only microbes can digest plants. That makes plants indigestible for the human being. So when we eat plant matter, it sits there in your stomach without being digested much. Then it goes through several meters of your intestines where absorption of food happens, and only things that got digested properly can absorb. So plants don't contribute anything serious to us. They can give you vitamin C, a few juices, a few phytonutrients, and a few minerals, maybe that's it. Then the plants land in your bowel, your large intestine, where the majority of the microbial community lives. And that's where the plants can be digested to some degree, and the similar process that happened in the cow's rumen happen in there. But the difference between us and cows is that in a cow, her rumen is at the beginning of her digestive system, before absorption of food happens. In us human beings, it's at the end. Too late. All the absorption already happened higher up. So we don't get nutrition from plants. Plants don't feed us. They only cleanse us. What feeds us? What digests in the human stomach full of hydrochloric acid, pepsin, and other elements of the stomach juice? The only things that this stomach juice, human stomach juice, can digest are meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. These things get properly digested. Then they go into the 3 meters of, or whatever, the length of intestines where the absorption of food happens. They absorb and they feed your body. They build the physical structure you live in. Because about 70% by weight of the human body is water. When you take that water out, what's left, the dry weight of a human body, is about 50-50, protein and fat. That's what we're made from. When we analyze human protein and human fat in a lab, we find that they're almost identical in their structure, biochemical structure, as the proteins and fats we get out of meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. So these foods are easy for us to digest because of the way the human digestive system has been designed. They're easy for us to absorb, and they give us the best building materials to maintain our physical structure, to maintain the body. So that, and remember, your body renews itself all the time. Trillions of cells are being born all the time. And in order to make them, building materials are required. They can only come from animal foods. Plants have plenty of proteins, plenty of fats, but in their biochemical structure, they're completely inappropriate for building human protein and human fat. So pea protein is not going to build your body, or soy protein, or any other protein powders made out of plants. It's a complete anathema. They will only poison you, give you lots of anti-nutrients, lectins, enzyme inhibitors, and other poisonous substances from there to give you arthritis, to give you autoimmunity, to give you allergies, and all kinds of other maladies in your body. So the structure, the most researched plant protein on our planet is gluten. And the more we're researching gluten, the more we find that nobody can digest it. It damages everybody, even if a person doesn't even suspect it. Even if a person doesn't have an idea that gluten is damaging them. And that's only one protein from plants that we've researched. There are lots of other proteins in plants that we're still researching, and all of them are damaging for the human body. On top of that, as I was researching all of this, my clinical experience has shown me that human beings do not need to eat plants to be healthy and well. That happened, everything I write in my books comes from my clinical experience. I didn't learn these facts from some book or somebody else. No, this is a fresh experience from real world, from real patients with their real illnesses that I observe, and I deal with. So I was contacted by a group of mothers some 12, 15 years ago now, who had exclusively breastfed babies, a few weeks old. Vomiting, diarrhea, the child is losing weight. Not growing, not developing, not gaining weight. At that age, a baby is supposed to gain weight quite rapidly, every day. Those babies were losing weight. Doctors did testing and they find that these babies are allergic to all protein on the planet. So on their advice, the mother had to stop breastfeeding and the child was put on a elemental formula made out of soya. And was told that you can never give the child protein. anything made out of produce, give them a few boiled carrots or something. These children, if they follow the mainstream advice, they develop profound physical and mental disabilities, and many don't survive, they die. The diagnosis at that time was new. It's called FPIES, food protein-induced enterocolitis syndrome. I knew by then, through my clinical experience, that plants are hard for human beings to digest. They're difficult for us to digest. And the more your digestive system is damaged, the less you're capable of digesting plant matter. I understood that these babies had such a damaged digestive system to such a degree that even the first stage of the GAPS introduction diet, which is the gentlest in the GAPS diet, was not gentle enough for them. So what was the logical next step? To remove all plant matter. I put them on a no plant GAPS diet. They were having meat stock that was made at home, gelatinous meat stock that we make in the GAPS diet. They were eating gelatinous parts from meats. Then we've introduced kefir, fermented kefir. That's a fermented milk, raw milk from organic pastured animals. And we introduced raw egg yolks for these babies. And fairly soon, diarrhea stopped, vomiting stopped. The child started growing, started gaining weight. Now these children are teenagers, beautiful children. No disabilities, no health problems left. They're beautiful mentally, physically, they recovered. But the most difficult thing for us was with these children to introduce even a microscopic amount of plant matter into their vegetable matter. They've been on this no plant diet for years. And they've recovered from their diseases and they were growing and developing beautifully. And it's these children that taught me a fact that human beings can do perfectly well without eating plants at all. We don't need 5 a day. We don't need 7 a day or 15 or whatever the latest number is from our technocratic authorities. We don't need to eat plants at all because they do not feed us. And you have to have quite a robust digestive system to handle them at all. Of course, plants are nice to eat. They give us colors, flavors, fun, but your digestive system needs to be capable of handling them. And if it's damaged, it's damaged. These children, many of them were on a no plant GAPS diet for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And every time we try to introduce the tiniest amount of de-seeded, peeled courgette, very well cooked, blended, diarrhea will return. Vomiting will return. We then finished up fermenting carrots and courgettes for 6 months, and then taking it the tiniest amount, cooking it well, thoroughly, and then blending it into meat stock. And that's how we started introducing some vegetable matter for these children. Even that was step forward and step back, and a step forward and a step back. So then I started using this variety of no plant GAPS diet with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, severe mental illnesses, cancer, and we started getting results. And now I have many adults with severe mental illness who have been on a no plant diet for years. They have no intentions of introducing plants. They're doing well. They feel well. They thrive and they live their lives very happily. So I went to India to study this Indian vegetarianism and veganism. And the first thing that I've discovered was that Indian traditional vegetarianism comes out of poverty.
Mm.
It's not a choice. There are so many people in India, and a large percent of the population live below the poverty line. If they grow an animal, they can't afford to eat it themselves. They have to sell the animal, and the money they get for it, they can then buy rice and beans for the whole family for the whole year. But they all have a lot of dairy. That is why the cow is a sacred animal in India. You can be prosecuted for harming a cow because they know that without the cow, without milk, this is animal food, they would perish. It allows them to maintain the physical structure of their bodies. And they all have ducks and chickens, and they eat plenty of eggs. Every egg that they get is added to their rice and their vegetables. Another animal food that provides the right protein, the right fat to maintain the physical structure of your body. And whenever they get a chance to eat meat or fish, they never say no. That is why they all supplement their food with occasional meat and occasional fish. That's the traditional vegetarianism in India. Veganism in India. I met this group of Hindu pilgrims. There was an excursion. We were sort of going through a part of India, and the guide told us, oh, look at this group of people. They're dressed up in special clothes. These are Hindu pilgrims. They travel right across India to their sacred sites, and part of their pilgrimage is a 41-day fast.
Wow.
I immediately pricked up my ears. So I've asked the guide what kind of fast. She didn't know. She couldn't answer that question. So next day, as it happened, there was a group of these people sitting on the beach. And I talked to them. Everybody in India speaks English. So, we could talk. And I've asked them, I said, so what kind of fast is this? They said, oh, it's very difficult, very difficult. We have to fast for 41, 42 days. You know how they bob their heads. And so I said, so what kind of, are you just drinking water or you're allowed to eat something? And they said, well, we're allowed to eat. Look at this. Rice, beans, vegetables, fruit, bread, vegetable oils. And I thought, oh, that's the Western vegan diet. Hinduism is the oldest religion on our planet. It's considered to be 35 years old, 35,000 years old.
Wow.
These people consider veganism to be a fast for 35,000 years. They will only do it maximum for 42 days as part of their pilgrimage, and they said that it is very difficult for them. The evangelical Western-style veganism has arrived to India with the books of Nathan Pritikhin in the 1930s, who was a New York Jew. He wrote very successful books. I don't know why they were so successful. I think that was deliberate. That was launched deliberately, probably. And that exists in India, and it exists all over the world, this kind of evangelical. So veganism is not a diet, it is a fast. You're not feeding your body at all to any degree because plants do not feed us. It's a cleanse, it's a fast. I have a chapter on fasting in my vegetarian book where I describe different kinds of fasting and how to come out of a fast correctly. So fasting is known as a healing modality, and people have been using fasting for healing from various chronic diseases for eons, but nobody can fast forever. So when vegans go on this fasting, regimen, their body starts cleansing, and a cleaner body feels better than a polluted one and a dirty one. Though in the first few weeks, they feel well. They feel better than before, these people. But then at a certain point, the body finishes cleansing, and it gives you a signal. I'm hungry now. Feed me. And the way the body will give you that signal to give you desire for a roast chicken, for bacon and eggs, for pot of cream, for cheese, or something like that. Problem is, many vegans in our Western world do it for political reasons, religious, emotional reasons, other reasons. They don't listen to their body. They don't feed it when it asks to be fed, and instead they force it to continue cleansing. And at that point, the body has no choice but to start breaking down muscle, bone, and connective tissue to feed your brain, your heart, your lungs, your liver, and other vital organs to survive. So long-term vegans have catastrophic muscle loss and bone loss and connective tissue loss. They're literally self-cannibalizing. They're cannibalizing themselves, these people. So vegans are carnivorous. They eat meat. They're just not obtaining it from outside their bodies. They're eating their own meat. They're carnivorous. They don't understand what they're doing, these people. And the problem is we have now MRI scanning and CT scanning to show us, to prove that the brain in the long-term vegan shrinks. The brain matter literally shrinks. So these people lose their brain capacity, their cognitive ability. First, the sense of humor disappears. They become very black and white. And then the cognitive ability reduces. They don't even realize what's going on to them, what is happening to these people. They think that they're perfectly well, and they think that they look perfectly good, though all the people who love them around are very concerned about what's going on with these people. Vegetarianism, where people eat animal foods, at least good quality dairy and eggs, and occasionally fish and meat, can be sustained. And I say such cultures exist in India. But what we need to understand that India has a warm climate. The warmer the climate, the less feeding we need and the more cleansing we need. So you can eat more plants when you live in a tropical environment. But the further north you live, the colder the climate, the more meat and fat you need. So vegetarianism is completely unsustainable somewhere in the North Europe, North America, Iceland or Greenland or other places like that. That is not a sustainable lifestyle at all, because the cold climate demands that we eat animal food, animal protein, and animal fat. So that is a fact that I've learned through my clinical experience. And I'm now explaining this to people, that majority of your meals need to be made out of animal foods. And the staple in the GAPS diet is meat stock, not bone broth. Please, we make a clear distinction between bone broth and meat stock. These are two different things. Bone broth is unsuitable for healing your gut. Meat stock. Meat stock is made with taking a chunk of animal with nothing removed. A hock of a pork, a head of the pig, spine of the pig with the skin on and meat on and the bones inside and the spine inside and all the ligaments and everything else, all the connective tissue. So you put that chunk of animal into the pan, you cover it with water, add salt and pepper, and then cook it for a few hours until the meat starts falling off the bones. And the stock that results from that is the meat stock. When you put it in the fridge, it sets like a jelly, full of collagen, because majority of protein in your body is collagen. 3/4 of protein in your body is collagen. The connective tissue, the scaffolding of your body that holds your body together is collagen. Problem is, collagen is a magnet for toxicity. And in the technocratic construct, we live in a toxic world. A lot of toxins come into our bodies and they attach themselves to collagen. Then the immune system finds this contaminated, dirty collagen and uses inflammation and autoimmunity to clean it. So a lot of collagen gets damaged. We'll lose collagen on a daily basis. And the more contaminated your body is, the more collagen you lose. That is why pouring collagen back in is essential for us, for human beings. And that is what the meat stock will provide you with. A bowl of soup made with a homemade meat stock will provide you probably with 2 jars of collagen supplement. It's the cheapest and the most efficient way. And collagen supplements don't work the same way at all. They're highly processed. You need meat stock. You need to cook at home. You need to make this healing remedy. And the most valuable parts of any animal that we made the meat stock with are the connective tissue. So the skin on your chicken, the backside of the chicken, the wings, the legs, the bones, all the ligaments and all the joints, The breast is the least nutritious part of a chicken. And yet in a technocratic construct, everybody would taught to eat this skinless, boneless breast, which is the hardest to consume and which will not do you any good at all. That's the part that traditional societies throw to the dog. They will not eat the breast of the chicken. And real chickens in nature don't have these huge breasts anyway. That's a technocratic chicken. That's a hybridized Cornish cross, it's called, which has specifically been created to have this abnormally large breasts. My chickens that I have on my farm don't have these large breasts. Their breasts are about this thin because they're normal chickens. But they have lots of connective tissue to make beautiful meat stock, to make beautiful soup, and get lots of collagen. So collagen, dishes full of collagen are very important in the GAPS nutritional protocol. So if you have back pain, you have painful spine, your spine is made out of poor quality materials and your collagen is being dissolved, destroyed, and removed. So collagen holds your spine together. Spine is made out of hundreds of little joints with joint capsules and surfaces of the bone covered in collagen and the liquid inside, which is full of collagen, and all the supportive structures around. And all of it is made out of poor quality materials, and collagen is loose in there. So it doesn't give you good support. That's why you've got a back pain. That's why you've got a painful spine. Arthritis, losing collagen. Any form of arthritis, any kind of muscle disease, muscular disorders, prolapse of organs, hernias, bruising, easy bruising, you're losing collagen because your blood vessels are made out of collagen. So if you've sort of touched something, you got a bruise, and you think, my goodness, how I didn't bruise myself, I didn't hurt myself. How did that happen? Your blood vessels are made out of poor quality materials. There isn't enough collagen in them. They're brittle. You lifted a chair and you got a bruise on your hand. You become clumsy because your joints don't give you good support. There isn't enough collagen in there. You fall over on a perfectly level floor and hurt yourself, bruise yourself. And every organ in our bodies has a capsule made out of collagen and has ligaments that are holding that organ at a particular level, hanging. And if you don't have collagen, they will be prolapsing, they'll be hanging too low, and you'll get a lot of symptoms from that. So that is why every traditional culture, every day, eat meat stock. Lots of collagen. Soup is an absolute basis of human diet. And I'm a farmer. So when we slaughter an animal, let's say we slaughtered a cow, a calf, or a bullock, as we call it, majority of that animal, 90%, is connective tissue. These are bits and pieces. You can't do them 3 minutes on each side. Fillet steak is only a tiny little bit of that animal. The rest of it, the mass of this animal, are tissues that you can't chew unless you've cooked them in water for several hours. They're tough. They're made out of collagen. And that is why every traditional culture, because they slaughtered their own animals, they hunt, they have their own animals, they make stock, they make meat stock every day, because majority of animals that they catch or they slaughter are made out of this connective tissue. So meat stock is the basis of human diet, of a healthy human being. And that is an absolute staple in the GAPS diet. Okay.
Yeah. That reminds me actually, totally agree. I mean, I've seen videos now, the Hadza and other African tribes and other native tribes. A lot of the times they're boiling um, their animals and meats and things like that. The whole animal, all the organs and everything like that in it as well. And I remember reading Herodotus, the original Greek historian, and he chronicled an encounter between the Persians and the Ethiopians. So Ethiopian king, Persia had just taken over Egypt, and so they were, feeling out their new neighbors and probably, maybe intimidating them or whatever. But they had this discussion that Herodotus wrote about, which was the king of Ethiopia asked the Persians, what do you people eat? How long do you people normally live? And the Persian described growing wheat and making bread and said that they lived in this, nearly 3,000 years ago, said that they lived, normally about 70 years, similar to now. And the king of Ethiopia sort of laughed at him and said, well, no wonder you live such short lives if all you eat is dirt. And our people only eat boiled meat and only drink the milk of our cattle apart from water. And our people live 120 years, sometimes longer, which seems quite far-fetched. But I learned in genetics class 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that chromosomally, based on the length of our telomeres, we're actually genetically designed to live 120 years. So you see these native populations saying they live in 110, 120, 130 years, and we just think they're just liars, but it actually lines up with our genetics. And that sort of reminded me of this. You're talking about these tough parts of the animal. Like, when you're living out on animals, wild animals or pastoral animals, you're not sitting around, you're not making steaks every day. You can't. Most of that animal is going to be much too tough for that. And that reminded me that they ate boiled meat. So they would have been doing the same thing that you're discussing, boiling this down and getting the collagen and breaking down those tough connective tissues to extract all those nutrients. And I thought that was quite interesting, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's wonderful, wonderful. Well, we have records of people who before in the 1800s and even in the first half of the 20th century lived to 125 or even longer. And in my own family, as the story goes, that my great-great-great-grandfather lived to 170 odd years.
Hmm.
Yes, and he had 25 children.
Yeah, wow.
Traditionally, Saturday was the day when he flogged his sons. That was the tradition for all
It's
the
like
for all the
line
sort
up.
of lineup. So for all the misbehaviors that they've
Yeah.
committed during the week, it was sort
Yes.
of a traditional thing. So this 150-year-old man was flogging 120-year-old sons. Yes, that was the that was
That's
the
funny.
story in the family.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
Oh, that's very funny. Yeah. Well, and the Native Americans commonly reported living that long, and people say, well, we don't have their birth certificates and things like that. It's like, well, we only have their records to go by, but you see the Native Americans, the Native Inuits, and then the Native Australians and people across Africa and Europe and Asia and things like that. They lived in this more traditional way. And they consistently, time and time again, you're like, oh yes, my grandmother's like in Siberia. Oh, what's the name of the group? Oh, the Nanette. Yeah. So they're herding at caribou and things like that. Caribou, I think caribou. And and they and there was a lady there. She was 99. She's out there herding thousands of head of caribou, and like, well, she can't be 90. She looks like she's in her 60s. So they just on face value of what we would normally what like a 60-year-old person would be capable of, or what a 90-year-old person would be capable of here in the West, we just assume that they must be lying because that doesn't make sense to us based on what we normally see as an average. But when you see it consistently again and again and again across various continents, how were they all talking? Is this like, hey, let's all just throw these people off and just all lie and add 40 years to our age and just to throw these people off? They're all consistently relaying how much longer they live and how much healthier they are at older ages. And maybe we should actually start paying attention to that and maybe thinking about what
This,
they're
uh,
doing
this,
that we're not.
yes, these are real human beings. They live in the
Mm.
real world.
Yeah.
Technocratic humanity is sick. We've talked about this. Practically everybody's ill. And nowadays in Britain, in America, if you go in a playground of any school, you can hardly see any healthy children. Practically every child has something wrong with them, some kind of problem. I remember when I was a kid growing up and going to school. In the whole great big school, I don't know, hundreds of children. I don't know how many children there were in our school. There were 30 children in every class. We had one kid with glasses, and everybody teased him mercilessly for those glasses. We were all so healthy.
Mhm.
Amazingly, there was nobody overweight. Everybody was slim, everybody was strong, everybody had rosy cheeks, and when the bell rang for a break between lessons, the whole class just rushed through the door, breaking the door basically. Everybody ran outside and people run around. Now looking at children, this is a very, very different picture. Very different picture. So that's what technocracy does. So when technocratic human beings then look at the real human beings, such as these Nenets people in Siberia, we've got lots of other varieties of people living in Siberia, and they all caribou herders, they all deer herders, and they all live at very, very cold temperatures and wear their traditional clothes. They're also healthy, these people. Their children are healthy. They They grow up in a natural environment. They don't go to school. So they live with nature. They're real human beings. And to a technocratic human being who thinks that civilization means gadgets and cars and houses and, you know, special clothes with labels and whatever, what have you, they think that those people are savages. But for those people, when they talk between themselves and when you talk to them, we are savages. They pity us. because we are completely and utterly lost. We don't trust ourselves, and we only trust our technocratic lying sciences. We have to have proof for every statement. These people do live over 100, healthy and happy, and everybody's got their destiny and their own life path. But they live in a completely different paradigm, completely different reality than the technocratic humanity lives in. And having got a farm and living with nature, close with nature, you realize all of that when you're in contact with nature more than with technocracy. You realize all of that, just what treasure it is, the real world. And the real happiness is only there. The real truth can only be found there. There is no truth in technocratic humanity. And there is no health, and there is no true happiness, and there is no true love either. People don't even can't define it, what it is, happiness, what it is, love. They can't even define it in the technocratic construct because these things are incompatible with technocracy. They only exist in the real world. There are wonderful books now published about Aboriginals in Australia, how they used to live. You know, I have a couple of books now. One's called The Dark Emu. That's a very good book. This civilization, when the English first, when James Cook discovered Australia and the English started coming to Australia, the first explorers, they kept diaries every day. And what they described was absolutely magnificent. These people, they looked after the whole continent. They had fish traps, they grew trees, they grew meadows, and they hunted their animals silently, and they made sure that their villages were surrounded by these beautiful meadows. They used fire very skillfully for creating these grasslands around their villages, so the kangaroo will come and graze right next to their villages. And using the spears and bows and arrows, they will take one kangaroo silently. So one animal will fall, and the others around wouldn't even notice and wouldn't get scared. They'll continue grazing. So the people will go and pick up this animal, take it into the village. So they had a constant meat supply by maintaining these meadows around their villages. And they built fish traps, very sophisticated fish traps in the river. So they always had fish. They didn't have to struggle to catch fish. They would just go and pick them up out of their fish trap. And these fish traps didn't interfere with the flow of the river. The river remained healthy. And the philosophy that these people had. And I have also books about American Indians and people in Siberia and Slavic civilization as well, how they understood the universal law of oneness. It's one of the major universal laws, which states that everything is connected to everything else. There are no barriers between us. So whatever you do affects everything, the whole of creation. That is why whatever these people did, they made sure that they looked after the health of the whole web of life around them, that the forest is healthy, the animals are healthy, the soil is healthy, the insects are healthy, the microbes are healthy, the waters are healthy, the rivers are healthy, because they understood that they are part of this whole big circle of life. And if they don't look after one part of that, if they abuse it, even one part of that circle of life, everybody will suffer, including them. Technocratic humans don't understand that. They can't understand it. They abuse nature. They've turned nature into their slave. They're destroying this planet. And then they think, why are we sick? Why are we living like slaves? Why do we have a slave system that the majority of population lives like slaves and the authorities are becoming more and more tyrannical? Because if you abuse, if you let even one suffer in the whole creation, everybody will suffer. We're living that truth without realizing what we do and how we've created that kind of reality for ourselves.
Yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you as well because I heard you talk about well, certainly all the different things that the GAPS diet helps, and I've certainly seen the exact same thing. Essentially carnivore diet is a plant-based GAPS diet. I mean, it's very, very have similar sort of ideas of just avoiding certain things that a body that humans aren't really capable of extracting nutrients from, can cause harm, have these other sort of toxins, lectins, etc., that that disrupt our physiology and biology. And seeing this, I've seen so many people heal, especially from things like autoimmunity. It's one of those things that we've had very poor treatments for in Western medicine, and it afflicts so many people. And it's big business. The number one grossing pharmaceutical agent, I forget the name of it, but it's an autoimmune drug. And I think in last year they grossed somewhere around $23 billion. And then number two was Humira as another autoimmune drug, which was around $6 billion. And then down to number three was Ozempic, which, I mean, everyone thought that would be the number one seller last year, but it was actually only number three. The number one and number two grossing medications were for autoimmunity. So this is big business. And so I mean, they're certainly not looking for a cure, because that would kill the goose laying the golden egg, because they make tens of billions of dollars a year treating the symptoms of autoimmunity, as opposed to treating autoimmunity and treating the root cause of it. I've come to the conclusion that autoimmunity is not autoimmunity. The body's not attacking itself. That your body's getting attacked by these toxins, like lectins, etc. I even found a paper from, was it Dr. Freed in 1991, and he made the argument back in 1991 that autoimmunity would have to, if the body was attacking itself, it would have to satisfy several different criteria, which are not satisfied in that current model of thinking. But just the known properties of lectins at that time could satisfy all these different conditions of what we would see in something we call autoimmunity. And certainly it fits when you remove all these different foods and you just basically eating, meat and fatty meat, that these problems improve a lot. And I heard you, I think, yeah, you were probably one of the only other people that I think that had a very different take on autoimmunity that I found very, very interesting. I was wondering if you'd like to discuss that with us.
Absolutely. In my blue book, Gut and Physiology Syndrome, which is behind me here, it's quite my latest book, and it's quite thick. Oh, the whole thing fell down. Yeah, it's quite thick. So I have a whole chapter on autoimmunity where I explain where it comes from. The mainstream concept of mimicry phenomenon that all the doctors are laboring on was created by pharmaceutical industry because it sells drugs. It has nothing to do with reality. It is a technocratic medicine, technocratic concept, technocratic propaganda, basically. And what it says, it states that your immune system has gone silly, doesn't know what it's doing, attacking its own body, so we must kill it. And the pharmaceutical industry is churning all these drugs to kill your immune system. So, the more we study autoimmunity, the more we realize that every chronic degenerative disease has an autoimmune component. Every one of them. There are more than 200 now of autoimmune conditions that have been classified as autoimmune. And the more we're researching every chronic degenerative disease, the more we realize that there is an autoimmune. Autoimmunity is only one tool that our immune system uses. It's got a big bag full of tools, and your immune system knows what tool to use for what job. So autoimmunity is used, and every time a doctor finds an autoimmune element in your, some antibodies in your blood, that they say, oh, right, your immune system has gone rogue. We must kill it. Let's try this drug, and let's try that drug. And I'm not surprised that they're bestsellers, because practically every degenerative disease is autoimmune, and practically everybody in a technocratic construct has a degenerative disease nowadays, has some kind of chronic illness nowadays. So the real mechanism of autoimmunity is contamination. And it's first and foremost contamination of collagen, proteins contamination. So toxins coming out of your gut when you have abnormal gut flora, and toxins coming from outside like to attach themselves to collagen. because collagen has a lot of amino acids with sulfur in them, sulfur-containing amino acids. Sulfur is a major detoxifying mineral in the human body. It's like a magnet for toxicity. So these toxins, they attach themselves to a molecule of collagen, and that changes the three-dimensional structure of that molecule. The immune system surveys your body all the time. It finds these contaminated collagen molecules, looks at them and says, gosh, you look strange. And first, it would use a mechanism that is on the shelf, ready to go, called inflammation. Your immune system will grab inflammation and use it to clean that contaminated molecule of collagen. Inflammation is a wonderful mechanism. It cleanses the body very effectively. It removes any contamination and removes any infection, any infectious agent from the body. So, but it's uncomfortable for people. It causes redness, swelling, pain, discomfort, and limitation of function. So people run and take anti-inflammatory drugs to kill inflammation. So the collagen stays contaminated. But the toxin keeps coming in and more collagen gets contaminated. So the immune system then thinks, gosh, I better use some other tools. So it will then study this contaminated collagen and start creating specific weapons against it. Antibodies, which the doctor finds in your blood. Antibodies. What the antibody will do, if it cannot cleanse that collagen, it will destroy it and remove it. So you start losing collagen. And that causes a lot of symptoms because your connective tissue starts getting loose. So the mainstream doctors then give you these drugs to kill your immune system, to stop it from being active at all. If you kill your immune system, then nobody's cleaning you at all. Toxins keep coming, you're just getting more and more contaminated. That is why the mainstream medicine considers every autoimmune disease incurable. We can only control symptoms and make you a little bit comfortable, but the disease will continue progressing and eventually it will destroy you and kill you. That's the mainstream paradigm. That's the technocratic paradigm. But if you don't go to the mainstream doctor and don't start taking these immune suppressive drugs, but cleanse your body yourself, and to do that, you first have to heal and seal your gut wall. Because in many people, in all GAPS people, their gut wall is like a sieve. Holes develop in it. Foods absorb undigested. Toxins come in through those holes in the gut lining. And they contaminate your body, contaminate your collagen. Not only collagen, lots of other proteins get contaminated. And then the immune system starts using inflammation, starts using complement cascade and autoimmunity and many other tools, many of which haven't even been discovered yet by our technocratic sciences. Thank God. Otherwise, they will have a drug for everyone, for every one of those mechanisms to suppress it. So you have to heal and seal your gut lining, close all those holes. So food starts digesting properly before it absorbs, and that toxic river coming out of the gut to your blood stops as well. And in order to do that, in order to heal and seal your gut lining, you need the GAPS diet. You need to go through the GAPS nutritional protocol. GAPS introduction diet in particular has a wonderful record of healing and sealing the gut wall. And you have to change your lifestyle so toxins stop coming from outside. Stop using personal care products. Stop using your laundry detergent, your dishwasher powders, cleaning chemicals, decorating materials, professional chemicals, all kinds of, and EMF pollution also has a great connection to autoimmune illnesses. So when your body stops being contaminated and the immune system has cleansed you and cleansed all the collagen and all the other proteins in your body, it doesn't need to use inflammation anymore. It doesn't need to use the autoimmunity anymore and other mechanisms. So your symptoms disappear and you heal. You can forget about your diagnosis. You can forget about your diseases. Every chronic disease is curable, even genetic diseases. Because our genes are not our destiny. We're all born with a full package of genes. For every disease, every one of us has genes to develop cancer, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, whatever. But it's the environment that you create inside your body and outside your body that chooses which genes are going to be active and which genes are going to go to sleep. Sit on a shelf and do nothing. I had many children and adults brought to me with genetic diagnosis. And when we put them on the GAPS nutritional protocol, they recover. Because through the GAPS diet, we've put those genes which cause their disease to sleep. We made them inactive. Instead, we activated genes for good health. And as long as the person sticks to the GAPS diet for the rest of their life, those genes will never wake up. They can forget about this genetic disease, despite the fact that it's been diagnosed in them. So every chronic disease responds to the GAPS nutritional protocol because your body is a microbial community and you fix it with that protocol. You heal it with that protocol. And coming back to the immune system, your immune system is never misguided. It is infinitely wiser and cleverer than any technocratic scientist, any technocratic doctor, any technocratic company. It knows what it's doing at every moment. If you respect it, if you listen to it, if you work with it. It's been created by the grand creator, the ultimate colossal intelligence that created the whole world. Who knows better? Our little scientists who tinkered in their laboratories for a few decades, or the grand creator who created the whole world. So working with your body, working with your immune system, respecting your body, respecting your immune system, letting them use their tools and thinking, how can I assist you? How can I stop interfering? And how can I stop pouring toxins into my body? Will make your disease curable. You'll get rid of it. You can forget about it. And it will take a certain amount of time to heal. Healing always takes longer. You know, it's not a pill that you've taken and you feel better. You are not better. The disease continues in your body. It continues destroying you. It's just that symptoms were suppressed. That's what pharmaceutical industry is designed for, to suppress symptoms. Symptoms are the way your body communicates to you that you're destroying it. It gives you pain. It gives you discomfort. It gives you inflammation. It gives you limitation of function. If you take a pharmaceutical to suppress pain, to suppress inflammation, to suppress any other discomfort, uncomfortable symptoms, you're telling your body, stop calling for help and suffer in silence. That's what you do to yourself when you take pharmaceuticals. Your body will continue suffering and continue getting destroyed and continue, the disease continues. It's just happening in silence, so you're not aware of it. You feel comfortable. But it never lasts. Every drug only lasts for so long, and then symptoms will still start coming through because they'll get worse because your body is being destroyed. It's getting worse, the whole situation. So they have to increase the dose and they have to add other pharmaceuticals. So you finish up swallowing pills in handfuls, getting all the side effects from these pills. But the disease continues destroying your body. That is the mainstream technocratic paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. I totally agree. I mean, it's interesting. You would talk about molecular mimicry and the body attacking itself. That to me doesn't even pass the smell test because, when I was taking immunology, it was very clear that your body can't do that. There's a maturation process that your immune cells go through in the thymus, and that they're tested against every single antigen that your body makes. And if they react even weakly to any of them, they're killed. So under normal circumstances, you cannot express antibodies or have an immune reaction with any molecule that your body makes. And so if the idea of molecular mimicry is thrown out at that point, because if you could make an antibody towards, pathogen that cross-reacted with your own antigens, well, then you have the capability of making an antibody that reacts to your antigens in the first place. You don't need molecular mimicry. So that's a useless step, even if your body is attacking itself, which I don't believe it is. You don't need that intermediary molecular mimicry. And a perfect example of that, showing the false nature of that, is blood types. We have, A, B, and RH factor, right? But people sometimes know this, sometimes they don't. But if you were, say, O negative, right? So you don't have A or B antigens, and you don't have the rhesus antigen. If you were to receive a blood transfusion from someone who had these factors, you would react, and your body would kill that. Why is that? Because you have antibodies towards those things, right? How did you get antibodies towards those things if you've never had a blood transfusion before? Because you actually get A, B, and rhesus factors in your food. You eat these things and they comes in your body, and your body says that's not supposed to be there, and it sensitizes them to that. So let's say you had AB. Let's say you were AB positive and you're getting these antigens in through your food. And then there's this molecular mimicry. Hey, look, this is outside of our body. Let's attack it. But hey, that's on your cell too. Let's kill that too. So your body knows your body's not going to attack the AB. If you have AB, you're not going to attack AB or anything similar enough to AB that it can then cross react because you're not capable of doing that. And so that the entire paradigm of autoimmunity just falls apart. I mean, you just with simple scrutiny. And even in my immunology textbook, which I've gone back and looked through, it was very clear. They said, well, something has to go wrong with this maturation process. We have no idea what it is. So this is a guess. They're just guessing.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Absolutely. Well, mimicry phenomenon was created by a pharmaceutical industry,
Mm,
whole theory. And in fact, the curriculum of medical schools in the technocratic construct is written by pharmaceutical industry.
absolutely.
Is a fact.
Yeah.
And just, conveniently, every theory that they create leads to sales of drugs.
Mhm.
So medical profession has been reduced to the sales force for the pharmaceutical industry. And
100%.
unfortunately, many good young people go into medical profession with the best intentions, with best aspirations of helping and healing. By the time they realize what trap they got into, it's too late. They've invested too many years, too much effort into getting this profession, and they just resign and do what they're told because it's an army. There's red tape all around you. As a medical doctor in the mainstream medicine, you have no freedom whatsoever. You're not allowed to think. You just follow the structures and you follow the script that is given to you. So what I tell people, when they say, why is my medical doctor saying this? And why is my medical doctor not doing this? I say, take pity on them. They can't. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place with red tape, with their hands tied up with the. So they're not allowed to think. They're not allowed to exercise any logic. And very soon the family doctors will be replaced by robots, by machines, because they'll do the job just as effectively, because all they're allowed to do is just ask you a couple of questions, enter that into the computer spits them the diagnosis, and there's a list of drugs that they prescribe. A robot will do it just as effectively. You don't need a human being for that.
Yeah, probably even better. I mean, if you're just following an algorithm, computers are great at following algorithm. But yeah, and which is, I mean, it's sort of a concerning thought for for people's professions, but at the same time, it just sort of boils down what that sort of medicine is. It's algorithmic, it's formulaic. There's no thought and discipline. There's no art to it. And is it really providing the best outcomes? I think that's very clear that it's not. The more technologically advanced we get, the more advanced we get from a medical science perspective, the more sick and plagued with disease that people have become. So clearly, whatever we're doing now is not working.
Well, Western medicine is a major cause of death and injury.
Yeah.
It's a fact. That's a statistical fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of
Well,
illnesses are iatrogenic, caused by doctors,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. I think that there's, depending on how you break down the numbers, it's as much as the third most common cause of death in America is through doctor's complications or medications that medication interactions and things like that. I've certainly seen that in patients. And I've certainly seen very serious mistakes being made. Very very lazy mistakes being made that have cost people their lives, and then in my own family as well. I've seen people get things wrong and people get hurt as a result of that. So and I'm sure everybody can relate to that as well. Having family members or friends or something that has gone wrong, medications that's gone wrong, some sort of procedure that's gone wrong or getting a misdiagnosis or something, and costing them for that. So yeah, I don't think that's too far-fetched for most people to believe.
It's just people naively believe that doctors are there to heal them.
Mm.
The
They
truth
used
is
to
very
try.
different. Yes, the
Yeah.
truth is very different. Doctors are there to sell drugs.
Yeah.
That's how they
Whether we know
truly,
it or not.
whether they
Yeah.
realize it or not, unfortunately. Many don't realize. And
Yeah.
when they do start realizing it, it's too late.
Yeah. There was a friend of mine, his father's a ENT surgeon down in California, and his dad had a funny story that back in the 80s and 90s when everyone was wearing pagers all the time, sort of before cell phones, he was just getting gas and he had sort of pager on him. And sort of the only people in the 90s that wore pagers were sort of, kids that wanted to be cool, drug dealers and doctors. That was it. And so this guy sort of looked at him and just sort of called over to him and was like, "Hey, and I said, "Yes." He said, "Can I ask you a question?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "So do you sell drugs legally or illegally?" And he just sort of laughed. He just said, "Legally. I sell drugs legally," like that. But that's what it is. And I think you're 100% right. I think doctors have just been the whole medical profession has been co-opted into an on-ground sales force. We're the street level drug dealers, and then we're working for the cartels behind us that are making this product, and we're the ones pushing it. And people are saying, "Hey, I want this sort of thing. Hey, well, I've got this drug for you. I've got this drug for you, and I can do this for you, and I can do that for you." It's the same thing. You're seeing a problem. Here's a problem. Here's a pill. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. I saw in medical school, not in ours, we sort of the postgraduate training course, but in the undergraduate course, it was these people straight out of high school, and I was sort of surprised at some of these things. I thought it was very sort of sophomoric, sort of the assignments they were given, but they were actually given something that I would have seen in junior high school, like a in a like a vocabulary sort of handout or a test or something like that. Here's the word, and you line up with the definition. You actually draw a line from the word to the definition. Do this with kids, but they had this for an issue and a drug, right? So it was just like, here's the problem, here's the pill. Just you draw a line to it, and that's literally how they were being trained. Was like, this is this problem, this is the drug for that problem, and that's just how you're trained to think that the solutions are pharmaceutical based. That some scientist somewhere has provided a product that will fix this issue, and these issues are just plaguing mankind until someone has figured out a pill for it. And that was never the way people thought historically, even in the recent past. And it's just in the last several decades that we've sort of been manipulated into thinking that that's the only solution, that we just have to wait. There's this problem, but there's no way that little old us could ever figure it out. We have to wait for some multinational drug company to figure out a pill that can sort this out. And even from a microbiome point of view, everyone's waiting for the probiotics and prebiotics and some sort of product that can help them achieve optimal gut biome. And it is so backwards. And if we do nothing else, I think that just getting out of that whole mindset and paradigm would be such a blessing to humanity that would have far-reaching benefits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we all know the story of Rockefeller medicine,
Hmm.
that before the first couple of decades of the 20th century, doctors all over the world used herbs, who used
Hmm.
homeopathy, used natural modalities for healing
Hmm.
people. And they would work, with every human being. They would examine and talk to this human being and think, what might be wrong with this person? How can I help this particular human being? Because everyone's unique. You have to figure out their unique situation, and the doctors would think about the mental state of the person. what's going on emotionally. Maybe there's some stress going on. Maybe there's some family disaster that the person is going through. All of these factors needed to be taken into account. But then Rockefellers discovered, because they own the oil fields in America, and they discovered that they can make drugs out of oil, chemicals out of oil. So they've set up an American Medical Association, which then set up institutions for training young people to become doctors. And all of these old modalities, the herbalism, the acupuncture, the homeopathy, and diet, of course, were outlawed, thrown out as unscientific. And only pharmaceuticals made out of oil were scientific and had scientific studies behind them, and so on. And that's how the whole medical system and the medical education system has been set up. This is Rockefeller medicine. That's the paradigm we live in Rockefeller medicine. That is why mainstream doctors are brainwashed that diet is nonsense. There's nothing to do with health. The homeopathy is just complete sort of woo-woo, it doesn't work. Herbs are complete nonsense. Nothing works, just pharmaceuticals. Because the whole medicine has been set up by Rockefeller Foundation to sell their drugs. That's a fact. It's a fact.
And
anybody who's interested can find all this information online.
And even going back, to the Roman era, Greek era, I mean, we know that people were using different, natural modalities and certainly diet. I mean, that's this famous Hippocrates line, which is "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine thy food." Another good line attributed to Hippocrates was, before you try to heal somebody, first ask them if they're willing to give up that which is making them sick. Understanding that the body just heals itself. The body should be healthy naturally. And so if you're not healthy, you're probably doing something to yourself or something's being done to you. Galen was a very famous doctor in the Roman era. If I'm not mistaken, he was the personal doctor of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. And he was extremely influential. And in fact, for 12, 1500 years, European medical education was teaching Galen, because Galen said, Hippocrates said, you need to experiment, you need to trial, you need to look what's in front of you and try things that work. And if something else works better, you need to use that. And, have trial and error, have a lot of thought into what's going on. Don't just blindly follow something that because other people do it. Galen took that and exemplified it and discovered all sorts of new and wonderful things. But then said, hey, but then advised people to stop doing what made him such a good physician, and said, I've figured out everything there is to know about medicine. So if you want to know medicine, just study me. Just read my books and just study me. I've already figured it out. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so for about 1500 years, that was European medical education, was you teach from Galen. Eventually started coming out of that, but the treatments, the medications, so-called medications, were tinctures and concoctions of herbal constructs that were called galenicals. And so for over a millennia, people used these galenicals that were different sorts of combinations of different plants and herbs for different specific issues, and then until they've run up into the face of sort of Western pharmaceutical sort of medicine. But that was it. I mean, you're talking for thousands of years, people had used this to great effect, written books about it, published, and used widely. Then through trial and error, found different things that worked. And then basically overnight, that and so much more was just thrown out the window for this more industrialized version of medicine that we're in now, unfortunately.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's technocratic medicine. I keep coming back to this concept of technocracy. It's a technocratic medicine. Everything in technocracy is based on chaos and misinformation.
Yeah. I guess the only sort of good thing to take away from that is that this is quite a new construct, as far as the medical practice, this sort of corruption of it. This isn't the standard. This isn't what's been stood the test of time for thousands of years. And when we understand that, we can hopefully, uproot this fad in medicine and get it out. because it definitely hasn't been helpful. And hopefully conversations like this will help bring that out to more people, and more doctors are waking up too, which is really great to see. So
They,
thank
they
you.
are, they are. Humanity is waking up.
Yeah,
More and more people are waking up.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
because, you know, Galen, as you say, Galen,
Hmm.
he was the real human being. In his time, people lived in a more natural environment, close to nature. There was much less technocracy. People were more real human beings, and they trusted the body, and they were in contact with God, with the grand creator. And they had lots of gods that they had there, you know, that they believed in. And they believed in the spiritual aspects of the human being, which is very important for healing. And talking about ancient Greece, it's very interesting. They had two kinds of medicine in ancient Greece, because all the work in ancient Greece was done by slaves. Slavery was the norm at that time, the same in Roman Empire. And they had medicine for the Greeks and medicine for the slaves. So for the Greeks, they would talk to the person, they would try to figure out the mental state of the person, the spiritual state of the person, the physical. They would change his diet and give him herbs and work with him for months. That was the real medicine for the Greeks. But for slaves, they would just find concoctions or pills that would suppress symptoms. So the slave feels better and he can go back to work.
Mm.
So the medicine we have today, you can make a conclusion yourself what kind of medicine we live in today.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you given a pill to suppress your symptoms, or if you go back to work?
Hmm.
What
Yeah,
kind of society we live in today?
yeah, and there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of other things that would sort of point in that direction as well. Eating the impoverished food, slave food, being kept ignorant. The old saying is, you keep people ignorant, you keep them under control. And so now we're told, don't do your own research, only listen to authority, only listen. The list goes on, but there's a great book by a Nobel Prize winner in economics, Friedrich Hayek, called The Road to Serfdom, and he was arguing that all of these things are trying to push us back into that feudal system where you have these oligarchs and land barons that own everything, and then everybody else is just a slave to the land and belongs to the land. They're just serfs. You belong to the land, you belong to these oligarchs, you belong to these land barons, and that these different sorts of pushes for socialism and communism and things like that. These were just trying to get us back into that feudal system under a different name. And he was specifically talking about things like the rise in socialism in the 20th century, but it applies to so many other things. I mean, we're seeing this now in so many other forms. Different, BlackRock, Vanguard, they're buying up all the land as much as possible. Bill Gates is buying up all this farmland. Different governments are trying to force farmers in England off their land, making it's like a 67% inheritance tax, that you have this piece of land that's been in your family for hundreds of years, maybe more, and all of a sudden, just bam, like you're gonna have to pay the government $20 million just to pass it down to your kids
Mm.
instead of continuing to own it. Of course, the nobility it aren't going to have to do that. I'm sure that King Charles didn't have to pay an inheritance tax when he became king and Queen Elizabeth passed away. So of course, this only is going to apply to the normal common people, so that the elites can take the land away and put people back as just renters. You have the landlords and you have the renters and serfs, and they're just controlled. And serfs were tied to the land; they were bound to the land. They weren't allowed to leave. They weren't allowed to travel. They weren't allowed to move. They weren't allowed to get jobs in different areas. And now we're being told that we need to live inside of a 15-minute city where you can't go outside of the city. Everything you need is right here within 15 minutes, and so you don't need to go anywhere else. But the caveat to that is you can't go anywhere else either. You're not allowed to. And so for some reason, these people that get into power, they seem to really, really want to just make people just sit right where they are and control everything they do, including where they live. And for some reason, that seems to make sense to them, that this is going to help them in some way, not the people, but the oligarchs. And so I think that you can draw a lot of these allusions to, putting people into a slave state, into a comparative, oppressed state, whether
The
or not we
majority of
know
people
it.
are already in a slave state. We live in a slave
Yeah,
system. But the
yeah.
slaves, the difference is that the slaves are convinced that they are free people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The
Well,
propaganda tells them that this is a free country and you are free
mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, but when you start examining the way everything is organized, it is a slavery. It is a slavery system.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner people wake up to this fact, the sooner they will start leaving the technocratic
Mm-hmm.
construct and starting going back into the real world, into
Yeah.
nature. Get some land, produce your own food, form communities, stop this nonsense about individualism, create traditional families, abandon technocracy because technocracy is self-destructing. And before it self-destructs, it will take people into an absolute nightmare, such
Mm-hmm.
as 50 million cities and digital currency, where they can switch off your account with one button because you're misbehaving,
Mm-hmm.
and that system was implemented in China already to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Hear about that. Yeah. So this is going to get, the technocratic humanity will only get worse and worse. It's going one way. So the only choice for human beings is to extract themselves out of it, extract themselves out of its philosophy, out of its ideology, and go into the real world.
Yeah.
Because everything's spiritual in this world. We are
Mm-hmm.
spirits, first and foremost. This body that we live in is only a jacket that you wear for one lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you can't fly to the moon and jolly well jump out in your t-shirt and run around the moon, right? You need a spacesuit to walk around the moon. The same with the spirit. To come into this physical dimension, we need a spacesuit. So we create this body which can interact with this physical world and we can live in it. And this is a vehicle that you drive here. And this vehicle is made out of materials of this material dimension. And when we die, when we leave it here to decay and turn into other life forms. And we go back to our spirit world where we came from because we are eternal, we are invulnerable, we cannot be destroyed, and we never die. And if every human being understood this and started living from that position as a spirit, not as a body, the world will change very quickly, very rapidly, because there is nothing. When you identify yourself with your real self, with the spirit, you realize there's nothing to be afraid of in this world. Nothing at all. Or whatever money you have, Bill Gates or whatever, all these people, he's not going to take his billions with him, right? He will die, and he will die soon, and he will not take anything that he possesses, all of this, he will not take with him. You can't.
Yeah.
But what he will take with him is a huge negative baggage of all the damage he has done to people, all the children he has sterilized with his vaccinations all over the world, because he designs vaccines specifically to sterilize children, all the depopulation efforts and eugenics that he has committed, all the crimes that he has committed against humanity. His spirit will be contaminated with all of that. So he will go on much lower level that he came from,
Mm-hmm.
to the spirit
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. It's a lot of people, the ideas of Aldous Huxley and George Orwell, like they sort of are so pertinent now. And, Aldous Huxley wrote a book called Brave New World for people who don't know. And it's a very interesting book. And it basically talks about this technocratic state where everything's so advanced and they're basically, there's no religion, there's no community. It's just like there's this forced hedonism. You're required to meet up with people and have, sort of group orgy sort of relationships. It's all about casual sex. It's supposed to. It's sort of rude not to to not want to do something. And it's just and they're given soma all the time, which is sort of this drug that just dulls them down, and they just sort of go about their business. They genetically engineer people to be either the A level, that they're sort of just normal people that are benefiting from society, or from this situation, or people that are designed to be of lower intelligence, that they're sort of they end up being the workers and the more of a slave caste. But the people on the top level, they're also slaves as well, but they keep them enslaved through this technocracy and through these hedonistic pleasures. And they meet these people that are out sort of living in the wild, and the Native Americans are out there sort of just being humans, and one of them comes back into that world, and it's just so horrible and horrifying to him that he ends up committing suicide and hanging himself. And then Orwell talking about how people are going to be, so Huxley was talking about people can be controlled just through that and not even realize it. And Orwell, his book 1984, among others, talking about how this can be done through oppression, like in the USSR and in China, etc. And that you're sort of this double speak of, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and all these other sorts of things. And they all each sort of thought that, it was probably going to come, from their way through just straight overarching oppression, or very subtly where you didn't even know it. I think it's a combination. I think they're just trying every way possible to control and enslave people, and so they're doing it with both. People don't realize how caught up in this technocratic state that they are, and that how controlled they are through that. But then at the same time, they're sort of insidiously pushing in these like 15-minute cities and other sorts of controlling sort of mechanisms, so that the government and the people that buy and control the government, they end up being ultimately in charge of everybody's actions and beings, and people are just working to support those land barons instead of working for their own designs, which is so strange to me, because some of these people became multi-billionaires because of this system that allows everybody to rise up. And it's not like their fortunes are going to be diminished by other people being successful as well. They don't lose anything by other people being successful as well. But for some reason, they think that, I don't know if they feel threatened or something like that. They don't want other people to be successful as well, or they just think that because they were successful financially, that they obviously are just so much more intelligent and advanced than other people, and they need to tell people what's best for them because obviously they've figured it all out. I don't know exactly what their motivations are, but either way, the outcome is the same, that people get taken over and controlled and manipulated, and to not live the life that they wish for themselves, but that other people wish them to have, which is not acceptable from my point of view.
Absolutely. Aldous Huxley was actually a university teacher of
Mm.
Orwell. He
Oh
was his
yeah.
professor at
Oh
university.
great.
He
Nice.
taught he taught he taught Orwell, and what he's written with his Brave New World is downright sickening, absolutely
Mm.
scary. Where they use this drug called soma, that they
Hmm.
spray on the crowds of people to
Mm.
control them, and everybody just craves this drug because it's addictive and everybody wants it. And as a result, the population just turns into these slaves. And so things are not just as grotesque as they are in that book, but they're heading that way. They've been
Hmm.
working on it very much, and I think that's, the Brave New World is their manifesto, and
Hmm.
1984 too is their
Hmm.
manifesto. They're following it to the letter, and they think that they're so clever. They don't understand the word intelligence, these people, because they're spirits, first and foremost. And what they're doing to themselves, they're debasing themselves. They are destroying themselves, and they will die. Nobody will live forever in this world, no matter how many hearts they might transplant to themselves, no matter how many different technocratic tricks they might do to live longer. They will die, and their spirit will go to a very low level in the spirit world where they will pay the price for everything they've done here.
Well, hopefully we can, undo some of that damage and prevent much more in the future, because a lot of times people have to buy into the program, or else they can't enact it on us. And so you don't have to buy these garbage products. You don't have to subscribe to these systems. at least for now anyway, until we get to, be like in China, they're sort of in trouble. But if they all rose up at the same time and said that we're not doing this anymore, they'd actually have a chance. I mean, that's what, it's happened countless times before in oppressive states. Even in the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he described these different areas of society where they felt that they were oppressed, and he said, we weren't oppressed. We didn't have our 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 speech curtailed. We did it because we didn't want someone giving us a hard time, so we controlled our own speech, and we could have completely overwhelmed the guards and the police and everything like that, but they just didn't. He said that he was in Moscow and he saw this woman being arrested, and they were going to take her to the Lubyanka, and everyone knew she was going to die there. And there were 400 people just watching these four police officers, secret police, arresting her and beating her and taking her away. And they said there's more than enough people. They could have just intervened and saved her, but no one did. They could have. At any point, they could have. But they chose not to because they were sort of in that slave mentality already. And it was very difficult for them to get out of it. So at any point, people can wake up. And if enough people wake up, then it's possible to just push back on this and shut it down from happening. The longer it goes, the harder it is. And when you get into that point where you're so cowed that you're all 400 people will watch four people, abuse and terrorize others because you're just so scared of it happening to you that you don't want to stick your neck out. That's much more difficult to do it at that point. But so that's why it's so important now that people push back now and don't allow their freedoms to be taken away. Don't allow this overstepping of the boundaries between the people and the government and things like that. That you have to stick up for yourself. You have to stick up for your own rights and your own freedoms and your own health. And that if you are able to do that, then there's nothing that they can do to control us.
I think the disease, health disease is very spiritual. Every disease appears in the spirit first, and then it descends into the material body. Because the reason for it is because the spirit wants to grow.
Mhm.
In order to grow, it needs adversity. So adversity that we go through has a deep spiritual meaning, and it's necessary because of the way the human nature is. If it ain't broke, why fix it? If I'm comfortable, why should I change anything?
Mhm.
I'm not going to change because I'm comfortable. So the change is always made by discomfort.
Mm.
When you become uncomfortable, then you start searching for solutions how to get out of this discomfort. So adversity in this world plays a very important role. And all this, people that we call evil, their purpose is to create that adversity for us. So we grow spiritually. So we make the right choices. So when a person gets a chronic disease, a serious disease, every one of us has two choices. One, to go to the mainstream doctor and start taking pharmaceuticals to suppress symptoms. In that way, you're basically telling the spirit that has created this disease for you to grow. I don't want to grow. I don't want this lesson. You have to stagnate. You're not going to grow. I'm not letting you. Right? So that's one thing you're doing. But another choice is to change your diet, change your lifestyle, change yourself. Because when you go through the chronic illness, particularly when you do it with the GAPS nutritional protocol, with any other natural protocol, you change as a human being, as a spirit, as a person. Your spirit grows. It goes on a higher level. And it all is done through the unconditional love, because you learn to love yourself first and foremost, to love your body. And as you learn to love your body and love yourself, then you start becoming capable of loving other people with unconditional love. The only love that exists in this world, that is the Grand Creator's love. Because the Grand Creator created this world with this kind of unconditional love, love without conditions. Grand Creator loves us all without any conditions. The evil people, the good people, the insects, the worms, the birds, the animals, the plant, everything is loved unconditionally. by the grand creator. That's why, some spiritual writers and writings say that love your neighbor and love your enemy. And many people don't understand, how can I love my neighbor? I don't even know his name. Or how can I love my enemy? I hate him. Kind of thing. He's done this to me and he's done that to me. That's what is meant, to find the real love, which is unconditional, without conditions at all. There are three kinds of love, and the ancient Greeks again have defined them. One is called eros, erotic love, which is a love between a young man and a woman. And that kind of love never lasts. It doesn't last very long. And that's not a real love. The second kind of love is the feelings between members of one family, parents and children, grandparents, grandchildren, friends, between friends, feelings. And that was, the Greeks called that philos or philos, that kind of love. But the real ultimate love is the kind of love that Grand Creator has created this world with. Because nature in particular, it's solidified love. And that is unconditional, without conditions. When you treat everyone, and I think the purpose of human life, ultimately, is to come into this material dimension, which is a hard school of hard knocks. We're not coming here for a holiday. Far from it. We come here to go through adversity after adversity after adversity, so your spirit can grow and hopefully come back to a higher level in the spirit world after this lifetime. Correct its mistake that is made in the previous lifetimes, because we come here again and again, in and out, coming into this material world and then going back home to the spiritual world. That's how the whole thing is structured. This is called reincarnation, the wheel of reincarnation, the circle of reincarnation. And in the 360-some year, the religious leaders of the world got together in Constantinople, Vatican and other religious leaders of the world, got together in Constantinople and passed a law banning teaching on reincarnation.
Interesting.
At that point, the whole of humanity knew it. Everybody knew that they incarnate and reincarnate again into this world, that that's the purpose of the whole circle, so the spirit can grow. And if you come into this physical dimension and you get busy with making money and busy with abusing other people and enslaving other people, then you go lower and then lower and lower from incarnation to incarnation. And you finish up in horrible places in the spirit world, which people call hell, which are dark and cold, and you're alone and you're in pain. And you can sit there for thousands of years in pain. That's where Bill Gates is going. All these kind of people are going. So we can take pity on them, on those people, because he's not going to take all these lands he bought and all this money he's got with him. He can't. Much as he would like to, he can't. So, so this, everything is spiritual, and incarnation is real, and this world is where we come and do work. This is a place to do work and to do maximum work, not to waste this wonderful opportunity, because to come here is an honor and a great opportunity, and not everybody gets it. You have to wait for a long, long time before you're given the honor of actually coming here. And everybody, we all volunteered to come here. We clamored to come here. We queued up to come here. But when we come here, the rules of the game, you forget who you are. You incarnate into this body and you forget that you're a spirit, and you forget all your previous lifetimes and your plan, because everybody comes here with a scenario, with a plan of what you want to achieve here. And you have to find that through intuition, through your heart. But people get trapped in this knob here. Forget about the heart, and this knob will take you away on a wild goose chase. After money, after fame, after pride, after whatever, and this knob creates an ego. Many people get trapped in that ego, which is very selfish and which is busy with survival, and it's fearful. It's afraid of this world, afraid of everything, so people live in fear as a result. Everything is spiritual. And when you go through a chronic disease, and you really work with your spirit and you come with the unconditional love and you really try to heal rather than mask the symptoms with pharmaceuticals, you transform as a spirit. You take the spiritual lesson, you grow as a spirit, and when you recover, you're a very different person. The person that you were before the disease, you'll be ashamed of. You would never want to go back there because you've grown spiritually and you understood so much and you transformed spiritually and you learned so much and you've acquired so much of that unconditional love and you want to help the whole world. You want to help everybody. You understand the law of oneness, that you can't abuse someone and expect that you'll be all right. No, no, no. We're all connected. If one suffers, everybody suffers. That's the law of the universe laid down by the grand creator, one of the laws of the universe. There are many of them. And we need to understand that. So disease, a chronic disease, is a spiritual lesson. It's a spiritual opportunity. It's a spiritual adversity that is created by your own spirit in your body and the physical body in order for you to grow and transform spiritually. So I advise everybody to take the lesson, to do the work, to go through the journey, because the rewards will be eternal.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good spot to end on. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's absolutely wonderful conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I've been really looking forward to this and to meeting you. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure. And thank you for your work, Anthony.
Oh, thank you. And speaking of which, where can people find you and see more of your work?
I have a website called gaps.me, gaps.me. I'm creating another website which will absorb this one, which will be called Dr. Natasha. Just
Okay.
Dr. Natasha, which will be easier for people to find, drnatasha.com. And I've just completed a masterclass, which will be for everybody. I've been training people for decades now, but this course is for professionals. One is certified GAPS practitioners and another one certified GAPS coaches. We were doing training on gapstraining.com. And of course, those people need to be qualified. There are qualifications that are required to enter those courses. So, and they can only take a limited number of people. And I realized that there is a need to do a course for everybody, where people don't need to have qualifications, they don't need to have any prior knowledge. They can just join that course and learn. And that's the GAPS Masterclass that I'm launching. It should launch in a couple of months. So I welcome everybody to join, and you will learn an awful lot in there. It can transform your life. So join us.
Lovely. Well, I'll put those links down in the description below and encourage everyone to go and take a look at that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. Please do share this with others you think would benefit from it, and leave a comment on your thoughts and impressions of the episode. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.